Well, since it's Father's Day, I thought we'd do something a little different, and for all those guys out there that like something really weird and strange, we're going to talk about something weird and strange. So this is for you. We are actually going through this Bible series called I'm In, and the idea is we're going through every book of the Bible, or trying to hit most of them anyway, and look for ways that we can deepen our devotion to our Lord. And so we're in the book of Ezekiel. It's usually a book that people would skip over because it's a strange book. We're not skipping over it. This is perfect for dads who like weird stuff. So we're going to jump right in to something weird, a vision that Ezekiel has right at the beginning of his book. It says this: "In the 13th year, in the 4th month, on the 5th day, while I was among the exiles by the Kabar River, the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God." So here's his vision. "I looked, and I saw a windstorm coming out of the north, an immense cloud with flashing lightning and surrounded by brilliant light. The center of the fire looked like glowing metal, and in the fire was what looked like 4 living creatures." This is like sci-fi stuff, right? Then he describes the creatures. "In appearance, their form was like that of a man," so they stood erect, "but each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight, their feet were like those of a calf and gleamed like burnished bronze." This is weird stuff, right? "Under their wings, on their 4 sides, they had the hands of a man. All 4 of them had faces and wings, and their wings touched each other. Each one went straight ahead. They did not turn as they moved." And he goes on, and there's so much description here, but he goes on and he describes what was above these 4 living creatures. Their wings outstretched, each touching each other, making a square, if you would. And on top of it, what looked like a sea of glass, crystal, and on top of that, a throne, and on top of that throne, a man, only you couldn't see his face because he shone like light. And there was iridescence, rainbow colors everywhere, and brilliant light, and it just goes on and on. It is a strange, strange vision. So what is this vision all about? I was kind of hoping you'd tell me. Now, I just wanted something weird for Father's Day. That kind of does it, right? But it does have actually a purpose. This is how the book begins, and this actual vision that he has, he's going to see again and again throughout the book. This glorious, bizarre creatures and light and all this stuff. It does have a purpose, and it kind of relates to something that we all go through. Even as guys, we don't like to admit that we go through it, and that's this feeling that there's something wrong, not just with the world. I mean, we know there's something wrong with the world, right? You know that. But there's something wrong within us. We just kind of have this feeling, and not just knowing those things that we know about what's wrong in us, those things that we can identify. That certain pain, the doctor diagnoses, yeah, that's what you got, and that's what you need to get fixed or whatnot. Or we know that there's something wrong in a relationship, and we had an argument. There's something wrong, obviously, in that relationship or the work environment. We know something's wrong. I'm talking also about the times where we just know something's wrong. We just can't put our finger on it. We just are off. And all of us have experienced just being off, not being whole, not even being able to put your finger on it. Let me give you an example of this past Tuesday. You remember Tuesday? Tuesday was gorgeous. It was beautiful. The sun was shining. There was just a slight breeze in the air. We'd waited and waited for a day like that, and all of us were duped into thinking summer had finally come, didn't we? But it hasn't yet. But it was a nice day. Wednesday was nice too. But on Tuesday, you would think, oh man, this is a day I'm just going to enjoy. I was like, I'm going to go outside. I'm going to work outside. This is going to be a great day. Except for the fact that I just didn't feel right. Now, I wasn't sick. I felt fine physically. I just didn't feel right inside. And I could put my finger on some of it because I had some memories of my mom come up. You know, if you've lost someone close to you, you can't predict when those emotions are going to come, when those memories are going to come. But that wasn't all of it, because as the morning progressed, I started to have this one-man pity party in my office. I had to put a stop to it. I'm like, what am I doing? And what's wrong with me? And I couldn't actually put my finger on it. I didn't know. And we all have those moments like that, even on beautiful sunny days. Now, we know there's brokenness in the world. We can see that there's other pain and hurt in other people's lives, because some of them, they just post it online. We can read about their pain. And we know that there's a lot of brokenness in the world because systems are broken, systems like our media and systems like our government. We know they're broken. There's some brokenness there. There's some things that are wrong about the world, but there's certainly brokenness inside too. Now, how does this relate to this strange, bizarre vision that Ezekiel has? In order to explain this, I need to remind us all that God is a masterful storyteller. He tells a story with symbolism and with metaphors. And his story is huge. And his story is important. And if we're ever going to try to understand what in the world these creatures and this chair, this image, and we're going to have to go all the way back to the beginning of God's story. So if we go all the way back to the beginning, I mean, we're going all the way back to the early chapters. We know the story. We've been taught this maybe in Sunday school, and if you haven't, you know the story, because God refers back to it. Often Jesus refers back to it. It's the first man and the woman in the garden. And in that garden, they had everything they could ever want. God gave them paradise. This place was perfect. It was whole. There was nothing broken about it. There was nothing broken about the creation itself. There was nothing broken between the couple themselves. There was nothing broken inside. Everything was as it was supposed to be. And God gave them not just a beautiful place, and not just a beautiful relationship, and not just himself as he walked with them in the garden. He gave them purpose. He gave them a task. He gave them a job to do. And this job was to take care of this place that he had created. They were to take care of the garden. They were to tend the garden, and not a garden that has weeds, and not a garden that has brown leaves, but a garden that easily gives up its fruit and easily gives up its vegetation, a garden that is easy to tend to. And I know if you garden, you would love to have that. This was a perfect place, and this was a perfect job. And not only that, but they were told that they were to be fruitful and multiply. That means have babies and to fill the land. And the idea was that as they tended the garden, they would make the garden grow. And the garden was already vast and big and plush and enough for them, but they were to take care of it and make it grow so that it would cover the entire world, because their job was to fill the entire world with their descendants. What a beautiful place. What a perfect idea. Now, to encapsulate this, there's a word for it. There's a word that just takes all of that idea of a beautiful, perfect place where there's harmony and there's peace and there's union and there's togetherness and it's God is present there. That word is a word we all know. It's called home. It's a concept. Sometimes it's just a physical dwelling to us, but other times you know that as you open it up and you sit around the table and you enjoy stories and there's laughter, that it really does become home. This is home. Unity, peace, to be loved, to love, to walk with God. Home. Now, there's an opposite, of course, to home, and there's a word for the opposite. When you're not home, you are in exile. You are cast out, you are driven away, you do not have the ability to return. You are not welcome. You cannot go home. To be exiled is to wander, to be lost, to be not at peace. Now, all of us experience both of these. That is the wonderful, beautiful thing about this world, that we have not lost everything that home represents. We can experience home. We just also experience exile at the same time, because even in the moments that we feel most at home, we also have those moments where we recognize maybe it's something pretty obvious. There's pain in our body. We're not fully home yet. Maybe there's tension in a relationship. We're not fully home yet. Maybe there's financial pressures. The doctor says there's a problem. We're not fully home yet. So what does all of this not being home have to do with that vision that Ezekiel has? That amazing vision, creatures and light. To answer that, I have to continue with the story because it's not over. The man and the woman had this job to do, and yet they didn't complete their job. Not even close. They didn't even get close to completing it because they did the one thing they were told not to do. They had access to anything they wanted. Remember, this was a perfect place. Nothing was broken. They did not lack for anything. They had tree upon tree upon tree upon tree. God just says, don't touch this one tree. It's just simply, will you trust me for everything that I will provide for you? Can you accept that I am your provider and that I know what's best? And they eventually took from that tree. And they invited sin into the world. And to understand the effects of sin, all you have to do is watch the couple as they bow their heads and walk out of the garden. It took them a while to get out of the garden. This is a beautiful, vast place. It's very lush. But when they got to the edge of the garden, they stepped upon hard, dried, cracked ground, and weeds grew, and the sky no longer was crystal blue. I imagine there was this deep, bone-chilling wind that came upon them. They were cold, and suddenly their journey seemed hard, and their feet hurt. Also imagine there were a lot of gnats, and they were bitten by mosquitoes. That's what I think happened. They're in exile. And they're not the first family to experience exile. In fact, their own children experienced it as news got to Adam and Eve that their oldest son had killed their youngest son. They experienced the greatest form of exile, death itself. And then they would lose their oldest son, Cain, as well, because God cursed Cain for his sin. And here's some of what God said to Cain. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground. The ground, by the way, is the place that they have called home now. This is their new home. It's not a great place, but it is home. But Cain has to leave. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. His punishment, exile. As the earth begins to populate with families and generations, people continue to do what Adam and Eve did. Stop trusting in God. And they took, not from a tree, but they took what was not theirs, glory and honor, and they became very prideful, and they built this massive tower as a monument to themselves. And God came down and changed their languages so that they would be in confusion and would scatter away from that place. That place became called the Tower of Babel because there was all this babbling going on as the languages got confused. The punishment for pride and rejection of God, again, was exile. So what does this have to do with the vision that Ezekiel has? Well, to understand that, there's more story to know. We have to actually go quite a few years into the future, but interestingly, we're still in the same place. This place, the Tower of Babel, where nations were formed and confusion came and people scattered or were exiled, there was one group of people that was left behind that did not scatter. They were called the Chaldeans. This Tower of Babel became known as Babylon. And the people, the Chaldeans, are the people that God chose to use to restore what was lost in the fall. And so he called a man by the name of Abram, who eventually becomes Abraham. We know him as Abraham. And he says, I want you to leave your father's country, and I want you to go to a land you've never been to before. I want you to trust me. Are you willing to trust me? Basically, Abram had to self-exile himself. Self-exile himself. That's good grammar, isn't it, Julian? He had to do it to himself. He had to become exiled. Leave his home because God promised a better home. I'm going to give you a place that, he says, is flowing with milk and honey. That sounds strange to us, but it's just a metaphor for a place that is lush, a garden-like, a place that is going to be like Eden. God is going to reestablish home. And so Abraham obeys, and he exiles himself, and he goes to this new place. And I need to fast forward so we can get to the vision of Ezekiel. There's a nation that's built and grows and begins to flourish in this land, except for one problem. You see, God said to Abraham the same thing He said to Adam and Eve. There's a condition. You have to trust me. You have to follow after me. You have to obey me. And history proves that time and time again they refused to do so. They continued to rebel against God, and they continued to worship their own idols, and they continued to call upon other nations for help when they were in time of need instead of calling out to their God. And the greatest sin, we're told, as you read prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel, is that they started sacrificing their babies to foreign gods. And God said no more. He sent prophet after prophet after prophet to warn them, but eventually He rose up a nation to come and conquer this people and to subjugate them. And interestingly enough, the very place, the very people group that He calls to do this is Babylon. And Babylon comes, headed by King Nebuchadnezzar, and besieges the city of Jerusalem until it collapses, and then wave after wave He begins to take people from Jerusalem and Judah and off east, that way, off east into captivity. In the first wave of those who were taken, a man by the name of Ezekiel, a priest of the temple of God, was among those who became exiled. This man, Ezekiel, has this bizarre vision, strange vision, at the river canal of the little enslavement camp that he lived in. He has this vision. And you would think this would be a really good time for me to share with you what that vision is all about, but I can't, because there's more of God's story I have to tell you. You see, God's story goes from beginning to end, and we can't leave out the ending. You would never read a book halfway and not finish it, except for me in high school. That happened a lot. So the ending of this book, the Bible, is a book called, this is a collection of like 66 different books. The last one is a book called Revelation, and it's written by John. John was a follower of Jesus. He was called the beloved disciple. They were like best friends. John writes Revelation, though, after Jesus has already died upon the cross and rose from the grave and returned to heaven. And now John is actually under duress, in a sense. He has been taken from his home and placed on an island called Patmos. He's under Roman guard. He's a prisoner. He is in exile. And John, while in exile, has a vision. Does that sound familiar? He's in exile and he has a vision. What's wild is what this vision is all about. Here's that vision. At once I was in the Spirit, and there before me was a throne in heaven with someone sitting on it. So he actually is taken by the Spirit into heaven and gets to see. Well, we can't see, so he comes back and writes about it and tells us, this is what I saw in heaven. He said, from the throne came flashes of lightning and rumblings and peals of thunder. Sound familiar? In the center around the throne were 4 living creatures. This is his vision of heaven. The first was like that of a lion. The second was like that of an ox. The third was like that of a man. The fourth was like a flying eagle. These are the very same descriptions that Ezekiel told us about. There's an ox, there's a lion, there's a man, and there's a, whatever the fourth one was, eagle. Each of the 4 living creatures had 6 wings. There's a discrepancy there. In Ezekiel's description, he said there were 4 wings. But what we find when we read Scripture is angelic beings sometimes have 4 wings, sometimes have 6 wings, sometimes have two wings. Our pictures we like to draw only have two wings because the rest are weird. But I imagine if we actually saw them, they would be quite glorious. Day and night they never stop saying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and who is to come." And they're not the only ones there. I believe the four living creatures represent all of creation worshiping God, but there are also others, multitudes there worshiping God, including the elders of Israel. So it's really a cool imagery that he sees. So what's the deal? The deal is that Ezekiel is seeing the same thing that John sees, and they're both seeing the glory of heaven. They're both seeing heaven. The strange thing, though, is that Ezekiel is seeing it on the banks of a river canal next to a slave encampment in exile. Heaven came down into exile, which at first seems very odd because it really shouldn't be that way, right? Heaven should come down to Jerusalem. Heaven should come down to Israel. Heaven should come down to the best place, not the worst place. And yet heaven always comes down to exile. And the reason I can say that heaven comes down to exile is because there's a part of this story I left out. I purposely left out the best part, because the best part is the greatest story ever told. It's about Jesus Christ. And I want you to just think for a second how bizarre Jesus' story is. I think it's more bizarre than living creatures with ox faces and lion faces and wings and whatever. I think it's crazy because this is the Son of the living God, Jesus Christ, who reigns on the throne, who purposely chooses to be exiled from heaven so that he could come down to us. And he comes down to a poor couple, and I think it had to be a poor couple. He didn't have a place to even lay his head properly. He lays on hay in a manger in a barn because his whole life is going to be this way. He's choosing to live this way. He's choosing to. In fact, when he grows up, we're told as he begins his ministry that he has nowhere to lay his head. He's a wandering, not a I wonder, but a wandering prophet and teacher. And just who is it that he comes and teaches and ministers to? Well, let's see. There was a prostitute, and there was a crippled man, and there was a demon-possessed man, and there was a woman with a blood issue, and there was a blind man and a lame man and a deaf man, and there was a despised tax collector and those who were possessed by demons. Jesus came to those who are living in exile because all of us are living in exile. All of us are. And he exiles himself for the purpose of coming to us, to be with us. He doesn't just come down upon the bankment of a slave encampment of those who are physically exiled, but he comes down into the heart of Israel, who's experiencing in their history one of the greatest moments of exile, even though they seem to be at home. I think it's no coincidence or happenstance that during the time that Jesus grows up and ministers, Rome has subjugated the known world. Rome is in charge. With a hard, heavy hand, he has made their home not so much. And they're living in exile even in their homeland. Because all of us are. We're all living in exile. We are all struggling to make it in some way. You may have a good job, and you may have a great relationship, or you may have like perfect health. You might have all your financial needs met. But I doubt you have all of that. And I doubt you have all of that all the time. We all have wants. We all have need. Even on sunny days we can experience something just isn't right. And it's good to know that God comes to us in those moments because there are no other. And if the history of God's story doesn't prove it, then we are not reading it close enough. You are not going to find paradise here on earth. You will always be in exile. You can search and you can try to build the most perfect, beautiful place. And if you do, you'll probably get really prideful and build for yourself your own personal Tower of Babel. You can't do it because we're not home yet. Jesus accepted the worst form of exile, to be cast out of Jerusalem and to be murdered on the side of a hill for the purpose of providing for us two things. One, the promise that in Christ Jesus we shall be in paradise, better than paradise. We shall be in the promised land, better than the promised land. We are going to go to heaven, and all the things that are beautiful and lush and flowing with milk and honey, whatever that means, is going to be so much better. And all this is a taste of what is coming, and He wants us to have hope. But two, in the meantime, we're not home yet. And we have hurt, and we have pain, and we have reminders that we're not home yet. And so we need for God to do something that just blew the minds of the prophets as they foretold it was going to happen, and that is the presence of God living in our hearts. God, in the meantime, until He takes us home, is willing to make home in our hearts. But when you're having a bad day and things aren't going well and you're frustrated, you can always rest knowing God has made peace in your heart. You're home in here. And there's no greater feeling, there's no greater experience, there's no greater joy than to know that regardless of what's going on out here, and you can't predict it and you can't perfect it and you can do your best, but you're not going to make this paradise. He brings home deep inside you. And if you'll stop focusing so much out here and start looking in here, you might just have a little bit more contentment. All right, so our I'm statement, each week we have an I'm statement, something to take with us. I've already said it. I'm not home yet. That's our I'm statement. I'm not home yet. And I have 3 takeaways. First, if you feel you don't belong, that's completely normal. You aren't home yet. You're not going to have that. Everything's right, everything is as it should be. So what do? Well, since you are not home yet, let Jesus make His home in your heart. And maybe you already follow Him, and you've surrendered, and you've been baptized, and you're filled with His Spirit, but you don't rely upon that experience because you're so focused on the condition of your day and how things are going out here and the struggle and the tension and even the doctor report about what's going on in your own body. If we would focus more on the fact that He is here, even in the midst of our trials, we'll be more at peace. Remember, home is where you're loved and where you love and where you walk with God. He loves you enough to die for you. Worship Him in your heart. Walk with Him. Finally, while you wait for your eternal home, why don't we just do what Jesus did? Jesus purposely exiled Himself from heaven so that He could spend time with those in exile. Spend your time with those in exile. Find people around you that are broken. It's not very hard. We're all broken. Turn to the person next to you. Just look at them. Come on, look at them. You're looking at one broken individual. Spend time with them. They need you. And if you're thinking that you're not that broken individual, there's probably 2 people looking at you right now going, yep. Now I'm glad I'm not that broken. So you're not home yet. This is the human experience. It's not the way God designed it, by the way. He created a garden that was beautiful with the job of completing that garden and filling the whole world with descendants who would love Jesus and follow after Him. So God has promised that's going to happen someday, but it's going to be the new heaven, new earth. Until that time, we need to get busy and help others who are struggling. Be at peace in here, make peace with others. Because that's what Jesus wants us to do. Now, maybe you don't have that relationship with Jesus, and you don't have that changed heart, and you don't have that Spirit of God in you making a home in here. I want to give you an invitation right now. I want you to step out of your row and just come up front and just surrender your life to Jesus Christ. The team is going to sing in just a moment, and as they sing, this is your time to make your move. Now, maybe what you need is prayer, and we'll offer that as well. We'd love to surround you in prayer if you're broken and hurting, especially bad this morning. So this is our invitation. Don't miss it. Respond. Let's go ahead and stand. I'm going to pray. Father God, we ask for you to work upon our hearts this morning. There's some real hurt and real pain in this room. There's a lot of brokenness that sometimes goes unnoticed, and I'm asking that you help us to pay attention and notice. And God, if we're the ones that are experiencing it, I pray that we would step out and seek help. God, I especially pray for those who have never surrendered their life to the Lord Jesus Christ and His finished work upon the cross that allows you to place your Spirit in us, something that is so hard to describe, but I would never want to live without your presence again. God, there's a lot of weird things Ezekiel said in this text, but nothing stranger or weirder than the fact that God of all creation died for us. I pray that we would respond to that message this morning. And I ask for help in Jesus' name.